This is Robert Clinkybeard and David Anderson with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. We're going to take 20 minutes of your life to deliver some amazing business content from accomplished leaders to bring you value, scale your business, and better yourself personally. We hope you really enjoy the show, and I encourage you to share with your network so they can subscribe and we can expand these messages globally. We are also super excited to be supported by two brilliant sponsors. If you're tired of measuring properties, Site Recon platform fully automates measurements so you can focus on sales. So think measurements, think Site Recon. The other sponsor is Company Cam, who make it dead simple to communicate, document, and problem solve with guys in the field, no matter where you are. Company Cam brings documentation, communication, and liability protection together in one simple, easy to use app for you and your entire team. Company Cam is the only app every landscaper needs. Check it out. This is Robert Clinkybeard and David Anderson with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. I'm super excited to be joined today by Steve Steele. Steve is not only a major factor of the Bruce Wilson Company, but he has his own company. And I'm going to let you explain a little bit about your background, Steve, and your own practice. So tell us about your background.
Well, first, Robert, thanks for having me today. I certainly appreciate it, and I enjoy my relationship with the Bruce Wilson Company. Steele Dynamic Services is my company, and was born out of really a realization that there's a gap in the market for the services that I provide. There aren't very many people that work on the administrative and business operations side of the industry. There are tons that'll help you out on the operations side, but fewer of us that work on that back end, which really at the end of the day is almost as important as the front end. So I have an MBA in finance and accounting from Regis University in Denver. My undergrad was in management. I spent 20 years in other industries prior to coming to the green industry, but my experiences in those industries really kind of prepared me for what I helped build in our green industry company. Spent 15 years almost at that company, directly working with the owner, and then decided right in the middle of COVID last year in April to begin kind of fulfilling this vision I had of helping other companies achieve some of the success that we had achieved, and knew that a big part of that was my ability to help companies with those administrative and business operations.
That's awesome. I mean, what's really, I'm happy to be just obviously seeing you jump into that entrepreneurial world and be super successful, and the feedback I get from people you work with has been just outstanding. So nice job, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Tell me, you obviously, people contact Bruce Wilson Company and your own company, and they hear great things about you, and they start having conversations with you, and talk through what that industry looks like when you look under the bonnet and see what's going on, because I think you're right. I mean, I would also even argue that all the back end stuff is even more important than, it's great you can put in all this revenue, but if you're not making a good profit margin, then all that, they're just spinning your wheels. So talk what that whole process looks like when you first go into a company and sort of you go through your process.
I think probably just like on the operations side, most companies have a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses on both sides, right? And so I already have an idea of areas that probably need to be explored a little bit, but I really try and tailor my approach, at least initially, to what the client tells me they're concerned about. So if that is an overall need on the business or administrative operations side, to just dive in and help them determine whether they've got the right structure, whether they've got the right processes, whether they've got the right systems, we can do that. I have a series of 8 different questionnaires, if you will, that I give to my clients that help us really delve into critical areas like management practices, financial, business operations, sales, information technology, and work comp safety, and those types of things. So the answers I get from those really help me get a good idea. But a lot of companies have a need on the technology side, obviously, and are looking for ways to save manpower and to streamline operations. And that's where some of my experience in terms of ERP systems like Boss LM and Aspire software come into play.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, when you first come in and, the owner or whoever engages you has an initial idea where you should, start asking questions and pulling back some of the layers. And then once you actually start going through your due diligence, I mean, is it better than what they seem? Is it typically a lot worse once you probe a little bit deeper? I mean, what are some of the I mean, it obviously depends on company to company, but an overall general sense on what's your feedback?
I think typically when I come in, especially if it's the owner that's initially engaging me, they have engaged me for one reason, right? And that is typically either they aren't seeing the performance that they need, or they want to improve things like profit margins or improve their team's ability to function. It's rarely a easy, quick fix because most of those abilities are tied to the systems and the processes that the company has in place. And so what I really try and understand from my clients is what they want that end product or that end result to look like. Because if I understand what needs to be the end goal, we can kind of work backwards to figure out what either needs to be fixed or added or replaced or modified to get them where they need to be. And that's always with an eye towards making the process better for the end user, which is typically your employees, right? We can put systems in place, but if they're complex and they're hard to use, or people don't understand why they're in place, then you probably still won't get the end result that you want as an owner, even if the systems are good. So we want to keep them as simple and user-friendly as possible while giving the maximum ability to report and streamline operations.
No, that's good feedback. I mean, would I be fair in saying that, and I've gone through it myself, so I suppose talking from experience that, you spend all this time doing due diligence, looking at system, ERP system, you make your choice, you said, okay, I'm going to write that check, you put all those resources to it and doing it the best of your ability, you get past that finish line to going live and you think, oh, great, now I'm going to sort of let everybody else figure it out. And then it's sort of almost, you forget about it and you just hope that it's, producing all these efficient results. But then it's only when you start looking at your bottom line, you think, oh, maybe this is either you've chosen the wrong system, or through either lack of ongoing training or lack of systems and processes, things go somewhat sideways. Is that a fair statement? Absolutely fair, and probably more common than most people would like to acknowledge. When you talk to the folks that sell ERP systems, typically they're very right on the mark in terms of what the system's capabilities are. The disconnect comes in at the implementation phase. And from an owner standpoint, I think you probably have a good perspective of saying, look, I've got a 50,000-foot view of what I want things to look like. But when you talk about implementing a complex system at the ground level, there are many things that have to take place that will determine how successful that system performs for your company. So I think one of the major things that's overlooked by companies is having someone that really owns that.
You can't have a conglomerate of people that are responsible for separate pieces without having one person who's kind of responsible for overseeing the whole thing. That old adage, garbage in, garbage out, really is very appropriate when you talk about a system. So that's critical. You've got to have somebody who understands basically how systems work, how they report, and you've got to have a team that's dedicated to making the changes in their daily routine that implement using that system. And it's hard. That's the hardest piece, because people are used to doing things a certain way. And when you change it, it messes up their schedule. And if you can't get past that hard piece of implementing the change, the system often languishes. From an ownership standpoint, the other critical piece to success is that ownership definitely always has to be involved as a champion for that system from the top down. If managers don't feel like senior leadership is bought in, and there's not any any kind of issue, if they don't use it, then they won't use it. So it's critical that you get top-down support, and it's critical that you have a champion who is a super user who understands that system and can train the trainer, make sure that that system is implemented clear to the workers in the field, where it really the information transfer really starts. Robert, I've lost you on audio.
There we go. So let me get that correct then. So, again, some people would think, yeah, we've got Aspire, let's get some training, let's get all these people in, get them trained, which some people might think, oh, that's great. But then you're telling me on top of that, you really need somebody to own it. And it shouldn't be the owner. I mean, the owner should be bought in and pushing it, but you really need that somebody who owns the system, owns the implementation, effectively, as you see, that super user.
Absolutely. One of the most critical pieces of success and, I guess, failure that I've seen fairly consistently with many of my clients is that when you implement a system like this, if you don't have somebody on your staff that's working directly as part of the implementation team who understands and has an interest in technology and kind of has an overall understanding of how the system needs to be set up in order to best serve your business, you're really missing a critical opportunity to get success right out of the gate. Because oftentimes what happens is you get a system implemented and you find out as you begin to use it, man, if I'd have known that, I would have done this differently. And that's where a lot of times having someone such as myself that has experience in implementing these systems and how they can be implemented on the front end to best take advantage of the information and the reporting capabilities is important. Because if you've never done it before, you don't know the questions to ask. That old phrase, you don't know what you don't know. It's definitely true. And hindsight is always 20/20, but the challenge is that these systems are large and complex, and sometimes you only get one chance to set it up right, because going back and changing things later on may not be an option.
Right. So, again, through your experience, where do you see the most common challenges? Is it the smaller company that you would think there's less moving parts, but they don't necessarily have the resources to put behind it? Or the bigger, larger company, multiple branches in different locations, even different states? Where do you see most common challenges?
I think the most common challenges are resource issues within the company. When you implement a system like this, I think it's common to believe that one person can do it. One person can direct it. One person can even handle most of it. but that person has to be able to delegate and understand key players to bring in at certain points of the implementation. I've worked with several clients who've had difficult implementations, which is why they brought me in. And what we find out is that, one person who is maybe not even a full-time employee was responsible for implementing the system. And while the ability of these people is incredible to get the system actually implemented on less than full-time and without many resources, what happens is that when you go live, you end up with the individuals on the operations side who have to know how to use this system, how to clock into the time, how to approve time, how to manage things like work tickets, who've never been exposed to any of the training. They haven't been part of the implementation, and they don't have a good understanding of not only what they need to do on a daily basis moving forward, but how what they do really intertwines with everything that happens in the system. So yes, resource issues are the most common issue. And if you're looking at implementing a system like this, I think it's realistic to say I need someone probably at least half to 3/4 time who's going to be responsible for this as part of their job. It's not a full-time person who already has a full plate and this is kind of added in on the side.
So, if it doesn't matter whether you're small or medium-sized company, you have no system in place, you're maybe still running off of spreadsheets. I mean, at what point do you then start thinking, well, maybe it's time, I can't keep track of my timesheet or my spreadsheets, I've got turnover with my middle senior management, stuff is not consistent. I mean, what's that point in which you start thinking, you know what, I need to, even though I know it's going to cost some money, I need to really buckle down and get something?
I think the reality is that most companies would hope that they could job cost at a job level. And many do successfully working in a system like QuickBooks. As you begin to grow, though, I think you have to weigh the information that you get out of the system and its ability to fulfill and answer the questions that you have to have answered in order to make good business decisions from an ownership standpoint moving forward. That information is critical to your ability to know when to buy equipment, when you need to expand maybe crews or operations. And to do that, you have to have a good understanding of your profitability for your different selling divisions, whether it's maintenance or enhancement, construction, irrigation, snow. You have to be able to look at your gross margins in those areas. You've got to be able to evaluate individual customers within those different selling divisions to know whether you're making money, to tell whether you're priced right. So I guess what I would say, Robert, is if you can't answer those questions as an owner, if you think that you are making money on a division or on a client, then I tell you probably need to change your system, because the only real answer, right answer, from a management standpoint is I know for sure I'm making money on this client or this division, and here's how I know that. If you think, then that leaves a lot to interpretation and can lead you maybe down a road decision-wise that you might regret later on.
And what frequency should it be? Should I know or know on a daily basis, a weekly basis, monthly?
Yeah, ideally, you're looking at two things, right? I mean, your monthly financials are critical, but they're a rearview mirror look. There's not a doggone thing you can do looking at your financials every month if you have overspent your labor budget, right? That time is gone and you'll never get it back. So the second piece of any good system is being able to forecast and to look forward about what your current month or the next 30 or 60 or 90 days holds. So these ERP systems like Aspire allow you to forecast fairly intelligently what your labor and what your labor requirements are, and where they are, if the system is used correctly. So you want to be able to look forward, you want to be able to look back, but when you look back, you don't want any surprises, right? And so I guess that's another piece of the ERP system that I think is critical, is that if you're managing it forward, you already know what the backward look is, right? So there are no surprises at the end of the month. You've been tracking your revenue, and quite frankly, these are things you talk about on a daily or weekly basis as you meet with your teams, right? If you've got the right systems in place, you can tell where you need to maybe have more sales for a month. You can tell where maybe your labor budget is in danger of being overrun, and you can take you can make management decisions and put strategies in place as you're moving through the month that allow you to manage that, rather than getting to the end of the month and having a surprise that you might not like.
Right, that makes sense. But a similar question with the company who's been on the system for 5-7 years. They think everything's running smoothly, but there must be some red flags. There must be some type of indicators that say, maybe yes, subconsciously I'm aware that there's been a turnover, but there's just something not quite stacking up. So then they think, well, maybe I should again go back to my ERP system and figure out if it's truly running the way it's supposed to be running.
Right.
And then I've got another part to that question once you're done.
Sure. So yes, having some good dashboards and KPIs in place and utilizing the system to provide that information on an ongoing basis is critical. Helps you keep your fingers on the pulse of those things that, as an owner or as managers, that people are being held accountable for, or that are helping you understand the trend within the business, whether it's meeting your margins or whether people are selling enough or meeting their selling goals. My experience with ownership says most of the time owners know something in their gut, and whether they've got numbers to back it up or not, that gut is almost always right on. So as an owner, if your gut is telling you one thing and your system says something else, then there's probably a good bet that we need to go back to the system and look at the processes, because there's probably something that has fallen by the wayside in the system and maybe not being done correctly. And as you grow and as you get more experience with the system, some of those things may become more apparent, right? Because you know what to look for, you know what to expect, you know how the system functions.
And then, once you go in and do your stress testing and your recommendations, I mean, what typical results do you see in terms of either improvements within the labor percentage, or maybe it's the gross margin, or maybe even at the net level? I mean, do you normally sort of see those types of results?
You bet. I think the average in the green industry, and you could probably confirm this better than I can, but I think the average profit margin for the industry is somewhere in the 5 to 7% range. Ideally, you'd like to be, at least 10 and more if possible. And part of that is dependent on your mix. But for those low margin companies, right, the real critical increases that we see are an ability to just be more efficient, to use less labor. As we talked about just a minute ago, the better you manage labor, which is your most costly direct input by far, and the one that you have the most control over, just managing that and fixing a couple of percentage points on that will pay huge dividends on the bottom line. So I think part of it is having visibility to critical cost pieces that affect the bottom line. But I think the other piece is really helping. A system like this can provide visibility to data that maybe managers previously didn't have access to, right? Because from a company standpoint, if you are functioning solely on an accounting platform, you want to limit the number of people that actually have access to that system. So those folks that depend on information to manage their business may not get it but once a month. An ERP system really allows you to give constant visibility to your management group. And once they understand how to manage those things they're being held accountable for, and they see those numbers every day, it helps them get into a habit as part of their regular routine of managing the critical parts of their job on a proactive basis rather than a reactive basis. So I think that's one of the primary improvements that we see when customers implement an ERP system, is just that availability of data. And then once they understand what it means and they understand how to get the information they need out of the system to manage it, those are the things where we see some of the biggest increases in efficiency within the organization and the biggest impacts to the bottom line.
That's awesome. Well, we're running out of time here, Steve. Really enjoyed you being on today. I know we're going to see each other at the Aspire conference coming up in July, and then again in the Bruce Wilson Owners Retreat event in August in Hilton Head. Any other parting words, or how can people get hold of you if they want to just give you a call, again, just brainstorm with you a little bit and see potentially how they could work with you?
You bet. You can visit my website. It's steeledynamicservices.com. That's STEELE dynamicservices.com. Or you can shoot me an email, steve@steeledynamicservices.com. You can schedule a meeting with me out on the website. You can schedule through email. So please reach out to me if I can be of any assistance at all. I'd love to hear from the audience.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Steve. Really enjoyed having you on today. Hopefully our audience got a few nuggets from your great presentation today. So appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, Robert, for having me on, and I look forward to seeing you a little bit later this summer.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that was pure dead brilliant for you today, and we've got some great takeaways for your business and your personal life. This is Robert Klinkenbeard along with David Anderson, and would love to get you and your friends to join us on our journey. Two quick things before you go, listeners. Check out our website, thecommerciallandscaper.com. You can subscribe, you can share with your friends, but more importantly, check out our sponsors. We have Site Recon, who are going to help to capture measurements on your property and create a really streamlined process. And we have Company Cam, who make it dead simple to communicate, document, and problem solve with guys in the field, no matter where you are. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.